Welcome to today's Explainer. We're taking a much-needed step back from all the overwhelming noise of our daily routines today. We're going to explore a profoundly beautiful, entirely relevant 16th century spiritual text from Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Listen, if you're a young professional who has been feeling just completely exhausted lately, like you're stuck on a treadmill that literally never stops, you are absolutely not alone. This sacred Hukamnama speaks so directly to that modern feeling of burnout, and it actually offers us a timeless, highly practical map for finding deep inner stillness.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Right off the bat, the text gives us this striking, almost visceral metaphor. It says, "As iron is melted in the forge and reshaped, so is the godless materialist reincarnated and forced to wander aimlessly." Think about how incredibly relatable that is for us right now. We hustle, we grind, we bounce from one super stressful project or social expectation to the next, constantly feeling like we're just being melted down and hammered into shape by the intense pressures of the modern world. It is a wildly exhausting way to live, just endlessly wandering without any true sense of peace.
Section 1. The Modern Forge. So, the text astutely points out that without true understanding, our constant striving is really just creating more suffering for us. We're trapped in this forge by our own ego. That nagging belief that if we just push a little harder, work a few more hours, or grab a little more status, we'll finally be happy. But instead, we just wander in confusion. We see a really stark contrast here between two very distinct mindsets. On one side, we have the sikh, the materialist. This is the mindset driven purely by ego, permanently trapped in that endless, stressful forge we were just talking about. But on the flip side, we have the Gurmukh, the spiritually centered person. The text tells us the Gurmukh is saved through meditation on the Naam and practicing the divine word. Instead of fighting the current to constantly prove their worth, the Gurmukh finds total peace by blending with the divine will. It is a massive shift from frantic doing to peaceful being.
Moving on to Section 2, the illusion of wealth.
This brings us to a gentle but honestly completely necessary reality check about our physical world. The scripture reminds us that the Creator made all of this, and whatever we get in life is ultimately a gift from that divine presence. Our physical bodies, our worldly possessions, our super impressive resumes, they're all temporary. Yet we build our entire identities around these fleeting things, entirely forgetting their impermanence. Look at this poignant line from the text. "The body shall turn to dust, and the soul shall fly away." So where are their homes and resting places now? It's a beautifully sobering thought, isn't it? We spend so much of our prime years chasing these hollow achievements. Maybe it's a fancy executive job title, an elite promotion, or a massive house just to impress people we barely even know. But this verse asks us to just hit pause. It asks us to realize that none of those earthly structures provide a true, lasting home for our soul. They just distract us from finding what the text beautifully calls the mansion of the Lord's presence.
Which brings us to Section 3, the thief called pride. Now, the imagery takes a really fascinating turn here. The text introduces this vivid metaphor of being plundered in the pitch darkness of broad daylight. Just think about what that actually means for a second. It perfectly describes the utter confusion of our modern rat race. We are actively losing our most valuable assets, our mental peace, our free time, our spirit, right out in the open, all while we actually think we're gaining ground. The really crucial point is how this daylight robbery happens to us today. We sacrifice rest for status, like staying up until 2 a.m. to answer emails just so your boss thinks you're hyper-dedicated. We buy things to impress others, putting ourselves in massive debt just to maintain some curated image. And we let our ego dictate our career choices instead of following what brings genuine, quiet fulfillment. The text argues that pride is looting our homes like a thief right in front of our own eyes. We're voluntarily handing over our inner peace just to feed our ego.
Which leads directly to this profound question, straight from the source. Where can they file their complaint? Let's just sit with that for a moment. If we are the ones who left the front door wide open for the thief of pride, if we're the ones constantly letting our ego exhaust us in the modern forge, who can we actually blame? We can't exactly file a complaint against the world for a mess created by our own internal ego and our endless desires. The responsibility, and beautifully, the power to change it, rests entirely with us.
Let's look at the solution in Section 4, the spiritually centered mind.
Thankfully, the text doesn't just leave us suffering in the forge. It pivots to a deeply uplifting resolution. It tells us that the thief of pride absolutely cannot break into a spiritually centered home. When our internal house is in order, when our mind is anchored in something way bigger than our daily anxieties and deadlines, the ego simply loses its power to rob us of our joy. So how do we build that secure internal home? Well, this brings us back to the concept of the Gurmukh,
A Gurmukh is a spiritually centered person who remains awake in the name of the Lord and follows the Guru's teachings. And by the way, being awake here doesn't mean chugging more coffee and skipping sleep. It means living with deep, conscious awareness. It means intentionally stepping off the autopilot of modern hustle culture and choosing a peaceful alternative where your worth isn't tied to your productivity but to your divine connection.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate tool the Gurmukh uses, the Shabad. The Shabad is the divine word or spiritual instruction. The text tells us that this word literally puts out the fire of desire. Think back to that hot, stressful forge from the very beginning of our explainer. The Shabad acts like cool, soothing water. When we practice these teachings in our daily lives, the exhausting fires of our worldly anxieties are extinguished. And as the text promises, God's light illuminates and enlightens.
This brings us to our final part, Section 5, the Jewel of Stillness. So, once that fire is finally put out, what exactly are we left with? We transition from the heavy, melting iron of the forge to something completely different, something infinitely more valuable. We find the ultimate spiritual remedy that this Hukamnama presents to heal our modern burnout. The text joyfully declares, "The Naam is a jewel, a ruby." The Naam, the name of the Lord, this profound inner stillness and connection, is your true wealth. Unlike the temporary physical wealth or status that the thief of pride snatches away in broad daylight, this jewel is permanent. It's an internal treasure that no amount of worldly stress, no shifting corporate ladder, and no external judgment can ever take away from you.
This builds into such a beautiful promise from the scripture, which states, "One who follows the Guru's teachings remains forever free of desire." By letting go of those burning, endless desires, that desperate need to be the absolute best, to have the most, to constantly prove ourselves to everyone around us, we finally make room for God's light to enlighten us. That is what brings true, lasting peace to a stressed-out mind. Honestly, it's like the deep, spiritual exhale we've all been waiting for.
So, how do we actually apply this incredible wisdom to our lives right now? Here is our clear roadmap to finding that union. Step 1. Step out of the forge of ego. Recognize when you're striving just to feed your pride and consciously take a step back. Step 2. Guard against the thief of pride. Stay awake and aware so you don't end up trading your inner peace for hollow status. And Step 3. Enshrine the Lord's name day and night. Keep that jewel of stillness in your mind as you navigate your workday, your relationships, and your daily challenges. Seek union through the divine will, rather than endless material striving.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's explainer, and I want to leave you with one final, pretty profound question. Where will you choose to place your focus tonight before you go to sleep? Will you lie in bed, mentally reviewing the stressful forge of your day, entirely worried about what others think of you? Or will you trade that exhausting hustle for the jewel of spiritual stillness, resting peacefully in the divine will? The choice and the peace that follows is entirely yours. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I really hope this timeless wisdom brings a quiet, powerful strength to your week.